Hi everyone, this is going to be a quick video about a particular, a very characteristic dominant chord thing that we do. So it's something that we do over dominant chords and we want to solo. This is like a chord substitution that we use to make it sound more interesting. And this can work for rhythm and for lead, although today I'll be looking at it from a lead point of view. So, a dominant chord, if you don't know what that is, that's just like a standard kind of seventh chord. So for example, D7, G7, there's another one, so D7, C, a G7 here, and so on and so forth, F, B flat 7, E flat 7, any of those sorts of things, it's a dominant seventh chord. Now you'll also see sometimes D9s and A9s and things like that, they're the same sort of thing, right? We're not going to worry too much about whether they're 9s, 7 flat 9s or whatever, sharp 5s. We're just going to think of them all as being dominant sevenths, all the same, right? So the progression which I'm looking at today is A minor, D7, G major, right? So it's like this. This is the A section to a song called Sweet Sue, but there are very similar A sections to tunes like Honeysuckle Rose, Avalon, and loads of standards have this sort of starting on the dominant sort of sound. So A minor D7 is just a decoration of D7. We're going to see a little bit more of that logic later on when we start talking about the substitute. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play some solo ideas over the D7. I'm going to use, first of all, for the first two tries, just chord tones, so no funny stuff. And then I'm going to use some of my little chromatic embellishments that you'll find elsewhere. I'll cover in a different video. So here we go. Thing there. So using some of the embellishments. Lower neighbour tones. Go down to the sixth. Enclosures, passing tones, yeah, that's nice. Okay, I mean, there's a lot you can do with just those basic chord tones, but hopefully you can appreciate that it sounds a little bit square, a little bit kind of, you know, vanilla. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know, sometimes that's what you want, but sometimes it can be really corny. So the substitute that I would like to use today is really comes to me from Charlie Christian's music. It's something that Charlie Christian used all the time. It's kind of his almost default lick on a dominant chord. And it's fascinating listening to the solos and seeing how much he uses it. He uses it everywhere in different variations and different styles to keep it interesting. So really very simply, it's just we take the D7 and replace it with an A minor 6, okay? And if you play a bit of gypsy jazz rhythm guitar, you might already appreciate that there's this relationship going on. So for example, if I play this chord shape here, which is the first chord of minor swing, it's obviously a minor swing, it's a minor 6. But then also, if we look at it from the point of view of another tune, we might use that as a D7, such as in the first chord of the B section of Coquette, for example. Yeah, we might use this as a D7. So they're the same thing, right? It could be an A minor 6, or it could be a D9. And it all depends on the context, right? So that relationship exists, and we can exploit this for soloing. But we've got to know what minor 6 to use over what dominant. So to do that, we need to know a little bit about the cycle of fifths, which I'm just going to flash up here to give you an idea. So the cycle of fifths is a sort of like a clock face, and it's got all the notes going around. And as you go around clockwise, each note is a fifth, perfect fifth higher than the last. So in the case of D, we're going to use A because that's the next tick around. If it was C, we'd use G. If it was F, we'd use C. So if it's F7, we'd use C minor 6. If it was E flat 7, we would use B flat minor 6 because it's the next one around on the clock. Okay, so we're always going clockwise. So another way of remembering it is there's a mnemonic which is quite seasonal, which is Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. Now, that might not mean much to you if you come from the States, but Father Christmas is our name for Santa Claus. So, you know, Happy Christmas and all of that. Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. That only does you for the sharp side, by the way. You need to know another mnemonic for the flat side, which is on the other side. If you see, it only covers like 7 notes. But those are the 7 notes most useful to us in gypsy jazz. Okay, so in our case, we're playing D7, so we go 1 tick around and we've got A. So Father Christmas gave Dad An, and An is A minor 6. So we're going to play A minor 6, and I'm going to include a couple of links underneath to PDFs for the A minor 6 fingerings. And I basically use, well, here I use 4 or 5 different fingerings, but here I'm just going to give you 2. I'll try and stick to those for the soloing. So this is the first one. You can also decorate it a little bit by putting this on top, which is something that Charlie Christian did a lot. And then there's this other one up here. And it's a very strong relationship to the chord shapes. So that's a chord shape for A minor 6. That's another chord shape. There's a lot of this kind of era is playing swing, Charlie Christian, Django Reinhardt. These kind of guitar players were playing solo lines out of the chord shapes a lot of the time. So there's nothing wrong with anchoring every melodic line or every arpeggio or scale that you learn to a chord shape. In fact, it's something I do a lot. It's a very traditional way of doing things. Okay, so we're going to go from this chord progression, A minor 7, D7, G again, and we're going to do the A minor 6, and hopefully give you a appreciation how it sounds. When I play this, by the way, I'm going to use little filigrees, little triplets, maybe repeaters. I'm going to use some join ups, or passing tones if you prefer to look at them that way. Which is a very common it's a very common thing to do or something that Charlie Christian did a lot. He did this far more than enclosures, as far as I can tell. He's much more interested in joining the notes up, which makes sense because it kind of fits on the guitar really well. Okay, here we go. I'll do some bluesy stuff. You use a lot of blues on the G. Something like that, okay? Hopefully you can hear that Charlie Christian sound coming across. On the G chord, anytime you have a G chord in like early jazz, like swing or anything like that, we're not too fussed whether, like a major chord, isolated major chord, B flat, G, F, whatever it is, we're not too fussed whether it's a straight major, whether it's a sixth, whether it's a dominant. It doesn't really make a major 7th, really doesn't make any difference. And when we solo over it, you can be a little bit fast and loose to that kind of thing. In more modern jazz, you might want to be a little bit more careful because modern jazz is kind of more vertical, it's kind of more harmonic in a weird sort of way. But in this kind of early style, you can mess around a bit with the 7ths and use different sounds, and that's great for getting those bluesy type of tones like this, which is kind of like it's like a Charlie Christian lick originally, and then Chuck Berry picked it up a few years later. Okay, so there's that kind of stuff. You can also use this kind of concept as a gateway into melodic minor harmony, because instead of playing the A minor 6, you can play like an A melodic minor chord. I'll show you how that sounds. An A melodic minor scale, rather. This is kind of a more modern approach. Use something called the Lydian dominant over the top of that. So you can use it as a gateway for those sort of modal sounds, but that's kind of a little bit beyond the scope of the lesson today. Anyway, it's a very, very simple substitute, but it gets used all the time and it's a great one to learn, so I hope you have some fun doing that. and playing around with that and using that in your improvisations. Thanks for watching. Bye.